And this one too is back up. All right, so I have some questions for you that hopefully aren't too repetitive from what you've been dealing with so far. But one, I'm sure you. The first one I'm sure is one you've talked about a lot. But I was hoping you could start by just kind of telling me how this band got together, whose idea it was, and how these players got together.
It was initially formed in 2018. It was put together essentially by Amit. When he conceived of this tour called The Bizarre World of Frank Zappa, which was sort of informally known as the Hologram Tour, although there's a lot more to that concept than just that. Is kind of this crazy multimedia, very layered evening of a bunch of different stuff, which turned out to be a very powerful show. The people that actually came out to see it were, a lot of them said they were really moved by it. So, but then, we discovered that it's very complicated and expensive production to move around from city to city, and us guys in the band just got excited about playing together again. We hadn't, some of us hadn't played together in years. I was in the '88 Zappa Band with Robert Martin and Scott Tunis, and Ray White, who joined Frank's band in 1976. I had never played with him before, so it was like an opportunity to get together and play this music that we really love. The drummer is Joe Travers, who was it continues to be the drummer in my band, Beer for Dolphins. So Joe and I have a lot of shared history, and obviously we both love Frank. Joe's main gig is as the vault meister. When he's not playing drums, it's his job to go into the tape vaults and find unreleased Zappa music to put out these box sets that have been coming out seemingly every month lately. And then the guitar player, the other guitar player, is a guy named Jamie Kime, who's a dear friend, an amazing player. I produced his solo album a few years back. So I've got like a lot of history with all these guys, except for Ray White, who I had never played with, and it was just a blessing to be able to play with him finally. So, it was formed to support this bizarre world concept. And then after, it was like, okay, this is a very expensive thing to mount, but we still want to play the songs. So we started doing shows at the Baked Potato, which is a jazz club in Los Angeles. And Amit came out to see us there, and he said, yeah, this is a concept that has, a strength, and it's valid, whether it's connected to the bizarre world concept or not. So fly my beauties, go out and do shows with the official blessing of the Zappa Trust. So at that point, and Amit named us. He said, we were thinking, what do we call it? And he goes, you're the Zappa Band. It's just that's it. I said, okay. So that's what we are.
So the first your first tour was that the King Crimson tour? Was that like your first real tour?
Exactly. We'd done like one-off things, or like 3 or 4 night runs at the Potato, but the first time that we were able to get out and just do like a series of shows was opening for Crimson last year, which was the first post-pandemic touring that any of us did.
Right.
And so that was sort of almost unreal the whole time it was happening. It was just hard to believe that we were actually out of the house, and then to have the opportunity to play for Crimson's audience, who were very discerning, and they were very enthusiastic. So that gave us a lot of confidence and just excitement about going forward. And now this tour in June is our first headlining tour. So the Crimson tour was amazing, but it was also in terms of what we could do on stage, it was intentionally limited by the scheduling. We could not play for a second longer than 45 minutes.
Right.
So for this tour, we've got a lot more time to stretch out on stage, and we're very excited about that.
You mentioned Ray, and I thought it was interesting that there's people in this band that you did play with together with Frank, and people he came before. Have you guys kind of like been comparing notes a little bit, like maybe ways things were when he was working with Frank, maybe things that changed, things that were similar? Like, has that been an interesting thing to kind of
anybody who's in the band has their own given perspective on how things went. It has been, of course, just delightful to listen to Ray tell stories about his times in the band. And his experience was way different from mine. And for one thing, he was already had a history in the music business by the time he started playing with Frank, whereas I I was completely wet behind the ears. I was a total puppy. So, I came to the experience with great naivete, and Ray came to his Zappa experience, having seen and done a bit more. So that also changes the way you perceive everything. And also just it's because any one of these songs that we choose to play has gone through a number of different permutations, because Frank changed things up with every tour. The arrangements would change, so every song that we do requires a lot of discussion, which version, and a lot, sometimes they end up being sort of conglomerations of a variety of arrangements from different tours that we sew together into a new framework. So it's the fact that everybody in the band has a different perspective on their experience with the music has really just kind of made the whole thing richer for everyone.
Yeah, you mentioned the Vault releases, and I think one of the most recent ones was Frank's last U.S. show in '88, and three of you in the Zappa Band are on that. Do you remember, much about that or that run of shows? And have you listened back to that release? Does it bring back any old memories?
I was really happy with that album. I think, first of all, Craig Adams did an astonishingly good mix. It might be my favorite sounding release from the '88 tour. And I remember the show very well. I remember that Hot Tuna opened up for us. I remember that it was, it was exciting for me because I was born in Nassau County, so to end the U.S. tour at the Nassau Coliseum was felt significant. And but one specific memories of a show go through all kinds of the things get bent and distorted over time. So it was really good to actually hear the audio evidence of what happened at that show and realize, oh my God, after 2 months solid of playing these songs, we have gotten very good at playing those songs. To me, the band just sounds like it's on fire. And the fact that it's one sustained performance, and I love the albums that Frank put together from that tour. I think Make a Jazz Noise Here is an amazing album. And so is Best Band You Never Heard. So is Broadway the Hard Way. But those albums are constructions. They're compositions in their own way, because Frank composed them out of a whole bunch of shows. He chose his favorite moments and made this new composition out of it. It's a different thing to just hear a show, one single show from start to finish, and get the flow of the performance and the way that the energy the way the energy waves move. So it was validating actually to hear it and realize, wow, that band, because that band had a troubled history and ended weird. But it was nice to know that at that midway point, at the end of the first 2-month leg before we went to Europe, we were clearly in a very good place. I hear a lot of spirit and like a lot of joy on that show. So it's cool.
I was thinking about, all the people that have passed through Frank's bands over the years, all these various lineups, and some coming in really young like you, some experience, and then going on to do all these other amazing things, from Adrian Belew, Terry Bozzio, and all this. And it made me think it's almost, maybe I'm wrong, I'm wondering what you think of this comparison, that it's almost like the Miles Davis, people that play with Miles Davis, but like the rock version, because once they go through that like pressure cooker or whatever, learn this music, learn how to work with this guy, then they're kind of set. They could do anything else after that.
I must be with you, because I knew you were going to say that, but right before you did, because I can't think of a better parallel in terms of an auteur type, a creator, trend setting, changing the course of musical history type guy, finding musicians at or near the beginning of their musical journey, so that you're getting their voice, but you're also getting their freshness, and you're getting their innocence, and you're getting their lack of experience, and you are changing their lives irrevocably, so that whatever that musician would have done if they hadn't played with Miles, or if they hadn't played with Frank, that the course of their life and the trajectory of their career and everything has been completely changed. And obviously both of those guys did that for so many musicians who then went on to create so much amazing music of their own. So yeah, I do think that there's it's hard to think of a more apt parallel in another musical form. It's really something there.
And you know, for you, you did it. You were with Frank just for, was it just a year or two?
Yeah, well, I mean, counting the rehearsal phase, which was
Yeah.
We rehearsed for 4 months and then we toured for 4 months, and we were supposed to continue touring, but Frank ended the band. So ultimately, it was only 8 months spent as an actual member of Frank's band, but then I continued working with the Zappa, organization largely as a member of Weasel and Amit's band in the first half of the '90s. So I stayed working with the Zappas in one form or another for 8 years, but sadly less than a year of that specifically as a member of Frank's band, because that was the last tour that he did. But I wasn't ready to stop. At that point, I was like, because I grew up idolizing Frank, and that was my first professional gig, which is bizarre and almost unsettling in a way, because if your dream, which it was literally my dream, to play in Frank Zappa's band, and that's how you start your career, then and then that opportunity no longer exists. Where do you go? What do you do from there? And that was the question that was hard for me to answer for a while, until I realized that the only way I could really properly sort of pay homage was to really jump into my own career and my own music, and to take what I had learned, what I had gleaned at least from being with Frank, and apply it to my own thing. But simultaneously with that, I went on to play with all these other people.
As a fan, as an outsider, you probably had a lot of knowledge about Frank and his music, maybe some perceptions about the way he worked. How did the way you perceived him, how did that compare to what it was really like when you actually got to know him and work with him?
I think it was, it should have been easy to figure this out just from listening to the work, but it wasn't. It was easy to take in the interviews and the persona and the image, and come up with the idea that Frank was some kind of a tyrant. Mm-hmm. And maybe I was concerned that it was going to be the case, although I didn't have much opportunity to really be concerned about that, because even before I was in the band, I had to pass his audition, and he was so personable at the audition, and I was nervous, but he, just by the virtue of his being, just he wasn't like going out of his way, I think, to make me feel comfortable. But he did anyway. I instantly felt comfortable in his presence, at the same time that there was certainly an intimidation factor, just because of who he was, everything he had accomplished and everything he represented, and the fact that I just had never had any sort of interaction with any of my musical heroes up to that point. So there was undoubtedly some nervousness attached to it, but at the same time, he really did put me at ease, and he just. All he really cared about was to have the music played well. Mm-hmm. He just wanted accurate performances of what he was writing. And if you were able to deliver that, he was incredibly easy to get along with. He was very tolerant. Tolerance is the wrong word. And magnanimous is the wrong word. He was an easy boss if you provided what he was looking for, which was accurate performances of his music. And he made no bones about the fact that he was the boss. He said that over and over in interviews. I'm not anybody's dad. I'm not here to be anybody's pal. I mean, apart from his actual children. But he didn't consider that he really had friends in the music business. The people that he was working with in his band were his employees. And he took seriously the fact that he was paying us to perform a service. And that's kind of a sacrosanct situation. I give you money, and the least I should be able to expect in return is that you do the job, you play the songs well. But he was equally serious about the fact that his boss was the audience. He's like, people are paying money to come to see these shows. I'm here to service them, and I don't want to waste their time or their money. It's like, so you're in this band now. People who come to these shows, he told me specifically, people who come to these shows expect to have their minds blown. He was aware of that dynamic. They weren't just coming to a show; they were coming to have Frank Zappa, freak them out. They wanted to be amazed, And he took that real seriously. He's like, I want people to leave the show feeling like that, you know, we left it all on the stage. We didn't hold anything back. So he, I think, had a real admirable attitude toward that. You know, it's like, I pay you, you do what I ask. The audience pays me. I do what they want. You know, I do my best to fulfill their expectations.
What does it mean to you to have the you know, the blessing of the Zappa family, and you know, you have this direct connection with Joe working on the vault, and you know, Ahmed liking what you guys do, and you know, does that give it an extra, I don't know, sense of, I don't know what?
You know, I mean, I'm grateful. I'm happy. You know, I'm always happy to find that people are passionate about Frank's music, and that they want to play it. And to me, the fact that we have the sort of official imprimatur of the Zappa Trust is great for a variety of reasons. You know, I would still love playing this music with these musicians under any circumstances, but it's nice to know, and it has to be said that the attitude that Amit and Diva are presenting in terms of people playing Frank's music is, you know, warm and generous, and they, like, they haven't tried to put an end to the Zappanale festival in Germany, for instance. So, and I haven't played at that festival for almost 2 decades, but I'm going to play there in July this year. And the fact that I can go and do that, knowing that that's cool with Amit, you know, who's responsible for this Zappa Band construction in which we find ourselves, that is important to me. You know, it's like I'm very grateful that things have gotten to the place where they are now.
Yeah, there's, you know, a whole industry almost of tribute bands out there, and some are pretty obvious, you know, bands that have major hits. It's not a surprise that there's Beatlemania and Rolling Stones tributes and Led Zeppelin, but you know, Frank didn't have hit songs. This music was, you know, not for the faint of heart or the faint of ear, or you know, why do you think it's endured? And it's not just enduring in the, you know, the back reaches of the internet and small bars. It's, you know, you're playing Sony Hall in New York, and you know, it's kind of has the music isn't mainstream, but it's part of the, you know, a larger, you know, kind of a broad appeal in a way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it first of all, it means a lot to me that most of the guys in this band are guys who played with Frank, so they bring an authority to it that you just can't argue with. And then I think that musicians love playing the songs because it challenges them.
Mm-hmm.
Audiences love hearing the songs because they enjoy hearing good musicians being challenged. They like to see, you know, a quality musician, you know, playing at or near the top of their skill level. It's you know, not just from, you know, like a surface sort of, you know, boy, that's impressive, or you know, check out the athletics nature of it. It's just exciting to see a group of musicians working together to pull something off that's not easy. You know, it's also, you know, wonderful to see something that is easy and relaxed and just sounds good. But you know, the Zappa musical experience is a specific kind of energy. You know, you used to feel it when you'd go to a Frank Zappa show. There's just this kinetic thing. The air is electric. It's the whole thing is buzzing with activity and invention and excitement, and but at the same time, it's not just like nonstop intensity. There's contours to it. There's dynamics to it, because Frank wrote so many different kinds of music, and then you have the contrast between this insanely complex instrumental music and then the more straight ahead rocking vocal tunes, and then the contrast between the two, and the way you can pace the show to move from one kind of song to another kind of song. It's just it's exciting and it's fun, you know, because the music is really active and you know, charged with so much information that there's also the aspect of, you know, there's more going on than you can even take in. And there's a certain kind of excitement to that. You know, it's like looking around the stage, trying to take it all in as it's happening in front of your eyes and ears, and you can't even process it all. There's a special charge to that energy as well.
Yeah, another group I know you're involved with is the Project, and I spoke to Jonathan Mover recently, about that. And when you hear about the main progressive bands, there's obviously a certain list of Yes, King Crimson, Genesis, ELP, and all that. You don't see Zappa's name on there that much, but a lot of what you just described sounded like prog rock in a way. Do you consider there to be a lot of crossover there?
I mean, I know that there are a lot of people who are fans of both.
Right.
I sort of think of Zappa as a genre. So I'm fans of both genres, prog and Zappa. And there's, certainly Frank had a huge influence on a lot of those, every one of those bands that you just mentioned. There's a certain amount of Frank influence in there. Maybe not so much Crimson. I don't think Robert necessarily was that under Frank's spell at any point. But I know Keith Emerson was. I know John Anderson was a huge Zappa fan. Gentle Giant all loved Zappa. I can't speak to Genesis necessarily. No, we know Phil Collins was a huge Zappa fan because he got Chester in the band because of the way he played on Roxy and elsewhere. So just in the same way that Frank's influence, so Sgt. Pepper wouldn't be the way it was if Freak Out hadn't existed. So already Frank's influence has filtered into the water supply through the Beatles, the water supply of the culture. And it's the same thing with prog. And in Frank, I think that there were aspects, the surface aspects of progressive music, or maybe in the 70s it was still being called like classical rock or art rock. People weren't calling it prog regularly back then. And some of the more surface aspects of it, maybe the more fantasist, what people, the cliches that, people who think that prog music is all about hobbits or something.
Right.
I think that Frank probably bought into that cliche a little bit. But, somebody, I remember there was one interview, I think it was a self interview. I think he wrote both the music, he wrote the questions and the answers, but the question was something like, well, what do you think of this art rock? And he goes, oh, you mean guys who dress in tunics and the beat's no good? So I think that was, but then I also saw him, there's an interview clip on YouTube where he's talking about how excellent Gentle Giant are. And I knew that he was a fan of Steve Howe's playing. Mm-hmm. So like he could always hear and recognize good playing, and he always had respect for that. Yeah.
Kind of to wrap things up, what are sort of the long-term plans for the Zappa Band in addition to these dates you have on the books?
Well, I mean, this is just the hope is since this is our first headlining tour, and attendance has a lot to do with any band's future prospects. The hope is that enough people come out to these shows to make promoters go, yeah, we want to have these guys back, and then we go out and do more shows, and we also definitely would like to get overseas. So and then there's always just the challenge of making schedules work out, because I've got more stuff coming up with the project, and I'm doing more stuff with Devin Townsend next year, and all this stuff needs to be scheduled out. But there's, I mean, just the other night we played at this outdoor festival near Palm Springs, and it was so much fun, man. I've been obsessed with Frank's music for over 50 years now, and it still in some ways surprises me how much I get out of just the physical mental act of playing it on stage for people. It's just so fun and exciting, and everyone in the band was smiling, and everyone was sounding amazing. So right now I'm like twice as fired up as I was a week ago about this upcoming tour, having just done this show. So the hope and plan for the band is just to continue playing as much as we can for people.
Good. Mike, is there anything else you wanted to mention that I didn't ask about?
Nothing comes to mind.
All right, good. All right, well, I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.